So the next speaker is Ralf Küsters and we'll talk about web security, mobile, and applications.
So hello everybody. First of all, I'd like to thank Frank for the nice invitation to talk about, to give this tutorial on formal security analysis of the web infrastructure, web applications, and web standards. So I have been working on this for several years now, but still there is, as I will go into more detail later, there's not too much work on formal security analysis of the web infrastructure. So it's there's a lot of work on like browser security and so on, but like looking at the whole web infrastructure, there's not too much work on it. So I will motivate a little why this is important. And we will also see examples where things can got wrong and where formal security analysis was helpful to find problems. And, just like looking at the web application, which are pretty complex, is just not enough. So I will go into our model of the web infrastructure, and then I will look into case studies that we did. In particular, here we'll look at single sign-on systems and the analysis that we did on them. I will mostly, as far as single sign-on goes, talk about OAuth, and I will give you an idea of how the analysis work, what OAuth is. Also, we have to look at some details there to understand what we did. Okay, so motivation. So as you know, so the web is a complex thing, a complex infrastructure with many components. You have like web servers, browsers, DNS servers, and so on. And it's based on many standards, complex standards, also developed at a high pace by many organizations. So we have the IETF, W3C, and so on, and there's HTTP and many RFCs and so on. So it's very complex. Also, web applications get more and more complex. Many apps that you have on your smartphone are essentially web applications. And so they get increasingly complex, and of course you have many vulnerabilities, as you can read up in the news kind of every day. So far, when people develop web applications, then, well, if you're lucky, they like look at the like classical attack vectors. You would look at cross-site scripting, cross-site reverse forgery, and so on. So you will look at all of these. But looking at the whole web application and formalizing whether does this, if it's security critical web application, does it really satisfy the security property? It's not enough just to look at the known attack vectors. You have to take a different approach. And so you have to do some kind of formal security analysis, ideally based on a comprehensive model of the web infrastructure, which takes all these components and what is going on inside these components into account. And then you can formalize security properties on them, like for example, for single sign-on systems, authentication properties. So you would want to say that, okay, so I have this single sign-on system. Is it true that an attacker cannot authenticate as an honest user? Right? I cannot log in as Alice without knowing how this is possible. Is that really true? And then once you have formalized the security properties, you can then carry out proofs based on the model to try to prove that this property is actually satisfied, or you find attacks. Right? And then you can fix them and then try to prove again. So in our case, whenever we looked at something, we thought at the beginning it looks pretty good. Then we did this analysis, and it turned out that they are attacks. Good. So as I said at the beginning, there hasn't been too much work on this so far. So in particular, looking like having a web model for the web infrastructure as a whole. So the first work was by Akabe et al. 2010, and they had kind of very small, finite state model. They used Alloy to analyze a few things, but didn't really have many web features in it. And then it was a little extended to WebSpy, which uses Proverif. Proverif is a tool, an analysis tool for security protocols. That was already better, but still it wasn't really comprehensive, so it was more on the security protocol analysis level, but again didn't have many web features. So we thought we want something that is very close to the standards and pretty comprehensive. Of course, it's a model, so we have to abstract from many things, but we want to have something that is very close to the web standards and comprehensive in the sense that that it includes many web features. In order for the analysis, when we do analysis, in order for it to be meaningful, right? So otherwise we say, yeah, we proved that there are no attacks, but well, if you ignore most of what is going on from a technology side, then that is not very useful. So far, our model is a menu model, so a pencil paper model, so also proofs between pencil paper. We are now working on a mechanized model, but doing formal proofs with tools is not trivial at all. So for those who have tried this, you know that. So at the first step, we wanted to do this without being tied to any specific tool. Good, so I will talk about the model in more detail now. So in our model, we have browsers, we have web servers, we have DNS servers, and we have a network. So all these components can communicate. And then we have a web attacker, which might control some of the components, there might be malicious browsers, malicious web servers, and DNS servers. But the web attacker doesn't necessarily control the network, so cannot see every message that goes through the network. But we also look at the network attacker, where he just controls the whole network and everything goes through the network attacker. So he sees all messages, and when I receive a message, it comes from the network attacker. So he has complete control. So I will talk a little bit about the browser model because this is probably the most interesting one and the most stable one because, the web server also depends very much on the web application that you have. So in our web browser model, it includes many features of the web. So of course we have DNS, HTTP, HTTPS, requests and responses. We also model the window structure within a browser. So you have different windows, and within a window you have documents, and you might have in one window you have iframes, so sub-windows, and so on. So this recursive structure. We have scripts. We model scripts, honest scripts, but there might be dishonest scripts run by the attacker. We model web storage and cookies. And web messaging, so we have different windows, and within the browser, the different windows can communicate directly. That's the post-message mechanism. Of course, we also have XML HTTP requests. We model different headers because they are often security critical. Redirects and security protocol policies like safe policy. We allow the attacker to dynamically corrupt parties. So within, your system is running, you have like you have an arbitrary number of browsers, servers, and DNS servers running, and the attacker might decide to corrupt some parties at some point. Modeling, for example, that there might be some buffer overflows, for example, and then the attacker just takes the server over. And so we model it by saying the attacker can say you are corrupted, and then the attacker gets all the information. And then also controls it. So this is just an illustration how the model looks like. So this is pseudocode saying how HTTP responses are processed by the browser. So you would, the browser would look at the different headers that he sees. So set cookie headers and strict transport security headers, location headers for redirect and so on. So we will like process this and we write this in this view. Okay, so of course there is many more, but just so that you have a rough idea of how our model looks like. So this is kind of the browser model, and of course this altogether this is a model. So there are many or several things that we don't model. So we don't model language details of JavaScript at this point. So what we model is the interaction of JavaScript within the browser. So our JavaScript can create an iframe, can send HTTP requests and so on, and manipulate cookies and so on. But we are not modeling like JavaScript, the language, and like not directly process scripting, like because of problems of the syntax of the language and so on. We are not at this point not interested in that. But we look at the interaction of the JavaScript with the browser. Also, user interface details we don't model in the sense that like that one iframe might hide the other one. Right, which there are some attacks like click checking attacks you probably heard about that we don't model. So like the user interface we don't really look at. We could include it as well, but at this point we don't. As I said, we don't model like things like byte level attacks, like buffer overflows, for example, but we model the effects. As I said, if an attacker corrupts a browser, corrupts servers, we can model that simply by saying the adversary sends a corrupt message to the browser, and then the browser is simply corrupted and is taken over. We abstract from details of cryptography, also of TLS. So we essentially, when we have an HTTPS message, we essentially assume that it's well encrypted. So another way, I also work in cryptography, and there's a lot you can say about it. But in this work, the web model is already complicated enough, so we abstract away from this. We just say if I have an HTTPS connection, then that is secure. We model also public key infrastructure. We can handle that. So if something goes wrong there, we can handle that. But we are not looking at details of TLS. So altogether, so this is a pretty detailed formal model. It contains many web features. It also summarizes and condenses several standards, which is useful. It's useful for researchers, for teaching also, and for developers. It's just the model itself is when you develop a web application, just to have this mental model also of the web is already very useful. So we saw that when we did our case studies and also we developed single sign-on systems ourselves, I will come to that, having this model without even doing the analysis, having this model in mind is already pretty useful. Of course, the model is, the main purpose is that it's a good basis, a solid basis to do analysis, to formalize security properties, and then also to prove them. Or maybe disprove. Often it's first disprove, then you fix, and then you can prove. So it's a good reference, as I said, for also tool-based analysis, and we are now in that process already. but also for developers, researchers, and teaching. Good, so let's take a look at some case studies, and I will be looking here at single sign-on systems because they are security critical, and so this is a very good thing to study. So I'm sure you all know what a single sign-on system is. Most of you probably have used it. So if you have a web site and when you want to log in, you can do that by just entering email address or whatever, your username and your password. So, which is kind of annoying if you, for every website you have to do this. So alternative, you can just press the button, sign in with Facebook or sign in with Google, for example. And then if you, for example, press sign in with Facebook, you see a window where you can then log into Facebook. And then you are, with the same user name, you are then logged in on that site as well. If you're already logged in at Facebook, because you logged in at Facebook before, if you press the button, you are logged in at that site right away without doing anything else. Okay, very convenient and very widely used. So this guy for the discussion later on. So this website is the relying party. So it's and this Facebook in this case would be the identity provider. Okay. So behind the scenes, there's a lot going on. So there's some exchange on tokens, secret values, some redirects, sometimes some cross-window messaging. So these pages exchanging messages, and there might be some crypto involved as well. Good, so we used then our model to look at, to analyze different single sign-on systems. And the first one was Mozilla's browser ID system, because it tried to provide an interesting property, namely privacy, in the following sense. When I want to log in at TripAdvisor, then then that window might be opened, and I have to log in at Facebook, and then Facebook knows that I want to log in at TripAdvisor. Right? So I can be tracked. Facebook then exactly knows where I want to log in and knows exactly which pages I'm visiting when I'm using this. And so Mozilla's browser ID, they didn't want that. They want privacy. So, well, yes, Facebook should provide should be the identity provider, should like guarantee, in this case, TripAdvisor, that I'm Alice, let's say. But why should Facebook know that I want to log in at TripAdvisor? Right? So they want this privacy property. So we looked at this single sign-on system, and first we looked at authentication property. So because that's like the main property that the single sign-on system should provide, authentication and also authorization in this case. Authentication, so it shouldn't be possible for an attacker to log in as Alice if the attacker doesn't know Alice's Facebook password, for example. And so we analyzed it. Of course, well, we didn't expect too much because all that should work, we thought, but well, it didn't. Right? So it turned out that in that system, you could log in with any like Gmail and Yahoo email address. You could log in everywhere without knowing the password of the guy owning the email address. We reported that obviously very quickly to Mozilla, and they fixed it. And we also told them how to fix this, and they fixed it in 1 day. Well, they first fixed it in the wrong way. We said, no, that doesn't work. Yeah, but it was pretty quick, so they were very responsive. So we looked at authentication, and then we looked at this privacy property. At first, again, looked pretty good. We thought, yeah, that should work. It makes sense, seems to make sense. But But then it turned out that this was completely broken. Yeah, so let me show you how the attack works. So once again, privacy means that when Alice logs in using this identity provider, even if this guy is malicious, he shouldn't be able to figure out whether Alice wants to log in at Wikipedia, let's say, or my favorite beer. Okay? So that's the property. That is broken, and so here's the attack. So if Alice visits the website of the identity provider, for example, Facebook, then this attacker, the identity provider, could just open a new iframe, even the hidden one, and of the relying party, for example, of TripAdvisor. Then automatically, that's the mechanism in the login process, automatically there would be a browser ID iframe opened, and maybe there would be another iframe of the identity provider opened within that iframe. And this one is present if and only if Alice logged in at the relying party, at this relying party. So this iframe could now report this iframe by post message, all within Alice's browser, that, well, I'm here. And just by this, I can tell whether Alice is logged in at the relying party or not. In particular, I could distinguish whether Alice is logged in there or not. Okay? And so, unfortunately, this couldn't be fixed without a major redesign of browser ID. So, it was really a major flaw in the design of browser ID. So this is why we came up with our own single sign-on system with the goal that it should provide the privacy that browser ID didn't provide. So we designed the system, and then first, before implementing it, we analyzed it in our model and proved that it has strong authentication and also this privacy property. And it's really the first, and so far only single sign-on system that provides this privacy property. Good, and then we want to come on to look at OAuth and OpenID Connect. So OAuth is the protocol that is behind login with Facebook. OpenID Connect is the one that's used by Google. And well, these standards, so these are standards that are used very widely, not only by Facebook, Google, but by many companies. So first, my PhD student said, well, we don't really feel like looking into OAuth, and because many people have looked at it already, so what's kind of the point? We won't find anything new interesting. But nobody looked at it using this model of web infrastructure, right? So they, it wasn't like a comprehensive analysis. So we looked into it, and well, we found two attacks. We wanted to prove that it's secure, but we found new attacks on this, and I will go through some of them later on. We also fixed it, and then proved that, well, when you fix it like this, under certain assumptions, then you get security, in particular authentication and also authorization properties. And we were in close contact with the IETF working group for OAuth to fix it, and also one of my PhD students now kind of joined the IETF to work on the fix, and there will be a new RFC. And similarly for OpenID Connect. So let's take a closer look at OAuth and how it works, first of all. So there are different versions of OAuth. So OAuth 1.0, there's also OpenID, there's OAuth 2.0, there's OpenID Connect. And you might think they are somehow related, but they are not. So this is OAuth 2.0 works very differently to OAuth 1.0, and what is used nowadays is essentially only OAuth 2.0 and the same here. Yeah, so there are also several other single sign-on systems like SummerSOC, very well known. And so on. So let's take a look at OAuth 2.0 then. And so many of the tags also apply to OpenID Connect because this is also based on OAuth 2.0. So OAuth is consists of 4 modes of interaction. So there's an implicit mode, authorization code mode, and 2 others. So these are the most common ones, and also it has many options. So we will be looking at these 2. And so when you press this login with Facebook button, what happens is the following. So this is like Alice's browser, this might be TripAdvisor, the relying party, and this is the identity provider, let's say Facebook. So when I press the button, I'm saying I would like to log in with Facebook. This is reported to the relying party. And then I'm redirected to Facebook, or a new window opens, and then I have to authenticate myself. I do that, and then Facebook generates a so-called access token, which is provided in the URL in terms of a fragment. And so Facebook redirects my browser to the website of the relying party, to TripAdvisor. And so this is typically in some random nodes, so some random bit string. Now, this access token is supposed to be used by TripAdvisor, and so it's only provided in terms of in a fragment, so it's not directly by this redirect, not directly sent to RP. One needs some JavaScript that extracts it from the framework and then sends it to the RP. So essentially, so that's like a technicality. So essentially, this access code is eventually sent to the relying party. And with this, then the relying party, TripAdvisor, for example, can retrieve user data. Like, let's say Alice logged in, and then TripAdvisor can get information about Alice from Facebook and also can act on her behalf, for example, post to her Facebook timeline. Okay, so, and this is based on this access token. Okay, so Facebook knows, okay, that access token was created for Alice, and so now if the relying party contacts Facebook with that access token, Facebook knows, okay, the relying party is allowed to access or manipulate Alice's data. Okay, or it can also be used, so this is authorization, or it can also be used for authentication, because kind of the relying party just can ask Facebook who actually logged in at that point. That is also the information that I get when I send the access token to Facebook. And then I can just consider Alice to be logged in. So that's authentication. Interestingly, OAuth was not meant for authentication. It was meant for authorization, but it's often used for authentication as well. Okay, so this is one. This implicit flow is in this implicit flow we use a so-called front channel where the access token flows through the browser to the RP. There's also the authorization code mode. It's very similar to the implicit mode, so the many parts are the same. So I say I want to log in with Facebook, I have to authenticate. What I get now is an authorization code, and which is then sent to the RP. And then the RP can use this to ask for the access token. So there's another step now. I first get the authorization code, and then I get the access token. And often to get the access token, the relying party has to provide also a secret that only the relying party knows. So it presents the access token, its secret, and then only I get the access token. And with the access token, I then can do the same things as before, like for authorization or authentication. Okay, so that is then what's called back channel. It's so this AT doesn't go through the browser; it stays. Okay, so OAuth is meant to provide authentication. Well, it's certainly often used for authentication, authorization, and also session integrity. I will explain what session integrity is. But like these two we have seen. So authentication means, well, the attacker should not be able to log in as Alice, okay, without knowing a password. Authorization essentially means that the dishonest party should not be authorized to somehow manipulate or get information of Alice. Yeah. So, authentication attacker having full control over the network. So we require this even if we have this network attacker that I showed at the beginning, should not be able to use a service of a relying party as an honest user. The attacker should not be able to log in as an honest user. Okay? So we formalized this property in the model. So we modeled OAuth, the OAuth system, and in this specification there are unbounded number of browsers, unbounded number of servers doing OAuth, and so on. And I think in this model, even like DNS, we don't even trust DNS, so the DNS is run by the attacker. And then we formalize these properties. So don't worry, I won't go into the details, just to illustrate that we precisely formalize what this property is, that we formalize this property. So, session integrity. So, authorization is also modeled in this way, so let's skip that. Session integrity means that if the relying party at some point can retrieve data, Alice's data using this access token, Alice should have previously agreed to that. And so there should be this. Well, Alice said yes, I want to do that. Okay, that's session integrity. I will later we will see an attack also that makes clear what can go wrong. Again, we formalize this property. Okay, so let's look at some attacks. So. From the outset, OAuth is a relatively simple protocol. Not that many messages go back and forth, and also this is why we thought probably it's okay, because what should go wrong? There's not much that is going on there. But still, we found several new attacks. Namely, these. Well, I will go through these three in this tutorial. So the first two break authentication authorization, and then this state leak attack breaks the session integrity. Okay, so in the 307 redirect attack, the IDP accidentally instructs the browser to forward the user credentials, like his password, to the relying party. Okay, whoops, that should happen. So here's the attack. So that is the usual flow. So Alice says, I want to log in using this IDP, for example, Facebook, and then she has to authenticate, and then she gets either an access token or authorization code, and then the relying party can access information about Alice using this access token. Now, for this attack, we have to take a closer look at what is going on here. So in the authentication, well, the browser says I want to authenticate, and then the IDP says, okay, here's a login page, please authenticate. Then the user Alice types in her username and password, like for example for Facebook, and then in the OAuth flow, the browser is redirected back to the relying party. Okay? There are different ways to redirect users. You can, there are different codes, 302, 303, 305, 7, and so on. And well, if you use 307 redirect, what happens is that the username and password are also given to the relying party. That's not so good, because then, like, TripAdvisor gets my Facebook credentials, like password. That shouldn't happen. And so, like, this number is critical. If it were 303, that would be fine. 307 is not good. It's a disaster, right? So that shouldn't happen. So the attacker, in this case, easily gets. He doesn't even have to do anything, right? It's just he just gets the password for free.
This is a bug of HTTP or just
no, that is well, 307 is the 307 status is defined in the standard like redirect, which repeats post data that was sent in the original request. Then it's redirected. And 307 says the data is also SAN alone. Okay? That was specified. Well, in the OAuth specification, they say, it's a long document, and they say why the examples in this specification show that the use of the HTTP 302 status code, any other method available is allowed. Like, so you could, like as a developer, you develop OAuth, well, they say 302 we use, you can also use something else, or maybe use 307. And then you have a problem. Okay, so what you should really be using is 303, because there it is specified that the post data is definitely not included. Okay. So as usual, when you see attacks, they are often pretty easy, right? That's kind of obvious. But nobody, there are a lot of, and we all got to know them, there are a lot of smart people working on OAuth, but they didn't see this. Okay, so, and this was really, so we found this in our, using our model, because we modeled the different kinds of redirects that you can have. And then my PhD student tried to prove that nothing can happen, and then he said, but if this is a 307 redirect, well, then I cannot do it, so is that attack? Okay, so another attack, IDP mix-up attack, works like this. So here we assume that the first request is unencrypted and the rest is all encrypted via HTTPS. On the paper we also have a version where this is encrypted, but for now let's take the simpler case. And so a network, so let's take a closer look at this very first thing. So if we have a network attacker, the network attacker can do the following. So Alice says, I would like to log in with Facebook. The network attacker changes this and says, Alice would like to log in with the attacker, because the attacker might be an IDP. And so the RP thinks that Alice wants to log in with her attacker. So that is now the knowledge of the RP. Now, the RP should now redirect Alice's browser to this IDP, which the RP does. But the attacker, being a network attacker, just changes this and says, well, redirect to Facebook. Okay? Because this is also what Alice is wanted in the first place. Okay? So now Alice is actually redirected to Facebook, authenticates at Facebook, and then we have the usual flows. So she gets an access token, this is sent to the relying party, and then the relying party can retrieve information. But, well, But the relying party thinks that Alice logged in using the attacker, okay? The attacker.com IDP. Well, the relying party will try to use this access token with the attacker, right? And send it to the attacker, because this is the IDP from the point of view of the relying party, not Facebook. Well, RP didn't know that Alice wanted to log in with Facebook. Okay? So that means that the attacker gets the access token, and so the attacker can now get and manipulate Alice's information at Facebook. Okay? Which definitely should not happen. Okay, so fix here, and this is what we proposed also to IETF, is, well, at this point, Facebook should say, by the way, I'm Facebook. Okay? So I do a redirect here, and it should say I'm Facebook. Okay? And then also at this point, it says IDP is Facebook when connecting to RP again. And then RP says, wait a minute, why Facebook? I thought attack would and then it would stop. Right? So the attack would okay. Okay, so again, the fix is relatively simple, but there was a long discussion in the ITF on the OAuth working group how to do this, and well, these standardization groups work in complex ways. But essentially what they now adopt is really this solution. Okay, so now the last one, state attack. So here in OAuth there is a parameter called state. It's mainly meant to prevent cross-site request forgery. So in the first exchange, RP sends also state in the URL as a parameter, and this state is pulled through the whole protocol. In particular, so that at this point, when RP gets an access authorization code, RP knows, well, that comes from this request here, from this login request. Okay. Without it, without any state information, some other guy could just inject a new authorization code or an access code, which would confuse the RP, and I will show you what happens then. So it's important, in particular, that this state information is kept secret, so the attacker should not get hold of this state information. The problem is that, well, on this login side, for example, maybe on the login side, there are other external resources included, in terms, for example, you load some images from other sources. If on the RP side or TripAdvisor side, you have to include an image from another source, then the request will have a referral header saying, including the whole URI from RP. This URI contains the state information, and it contains it as a parameter. So in the referrer header, you have this information, so it's neat to external parties. And with that information, if the attacker has that information, he can inject other authorization codes, which breaks the integrity of the protocol. So what he can do is the following: he could create his own authorization code, get his own authorization code from Facebook by just running the protocol with Facebook on his own. And then at this point he could inject his own authorization code with that state. So RP thinks that this authorization code is the one for Alice. Okay. So now RP is trying to use that information and might, for example, post information about Alice on Alice's timeline or something like that. Well, the RP thinks it's Alice's timeline, but actually is the adversary's. Okay, so in this case, in this way, the adversary can again steal information. So that breaks the integrity. And that was what I said before. So here, this is getting information from Alice, and Alice should have given her consensus to that, which is not the case. Here we are talking to the adversary, not to Alice's account. So something went wrong. Okay, so these are 3 new attacks that out of the analysis that we did, even though all was looked at before many times. So we proposed fixes for all of them and also to other known attacks, and said, so if all of this is fixed or is implemented in the correct way, we wanted to know, so now if we do this, is this OAuth standard itself okay? Does it provide all these properties, authentication, authorization, and integrity? And this is what we proved after fixing all these problems. Yeah, so as I said, so we disclosed all of these attacks to the OAuth, the OAuth working group, and well, they were very concerned. So we had this emergency meeting like 4 weeks later. They all flew into Germany, and we had this meeting, and then it was later also publicly released. And then the guys said that is very useful. We really want to have this interaction on a regular basis, and so we initiated the OAuth security workshop, which forces the exchange between researchers and standardization group, industry, and so on. Everybody interested in OAuth, Open Connect, and like these kind of single sign-on systems. So since then, so OSW is held annually. The next edition is in Stuttgart. So if you're interested in single sign-on, this is the place to be. And so it's very interesting because you really get to know all the people behind these standards, and we also learned that, well, the people working on OAuth are not only working on OAuth, they are in like so many standardization groups, right? So many of them were involved in many of internet many internet standardization groups. So it's also very interesting to get this direct information from those who actually work on this stuff. Yeah, as I said, so we are now working with them also to fix these problems and really fix it in terms of having new honors. Yeah, so as I said, so OAuth was analyzed many times, but having this rigorous formal model and doing the systematic analysis really helped finding these attacks. And without it, well, we looked at it at first, we thought it not really interesting to analyze, but this formal analysis, rigorous analysis with proofs really revealed many interesting things. Okay, with that I conclude. So we developed a formal model of the web infrastructure to analyze the security of web standards and also applications. Found several attacks, proved the security of the fixed systems. We also proposed our own single sign-on system, which has this unique privacy feature. So if you are interested in that, you can certainly talk to me. And yeah, so we have been working with the standardization organizations to improve all these protocols. And with that, thank you for your interest.
So let's start with questions.
Yes, I have a question. So in parallel, I read the paper you had on the slide.
You're fast.
Not completed, it's 95 pages.
Yeah, it's a long proof. Yeah.
And I'm amazed, first of all, of how simple the attack is, and the second, the 307 attack was very straight actually. And then I'm amazed, or the question relates to the point, have you done the proof by hand, or is there any support by software?
So this we actually did by hand. So the way it works is I put my PhD students in a room and slip pizza under the door.
Okay.
From time to time. This is how the proof works.
Okay.
We are now also looking into mechanizing this, so mechanizing the model itself, so that to make it runnable, and also to have tool support. And essentially, what we started is to use theory provers to do that. But well, it's not like you press a button and then you get the proof, right? So it's everybody who has ever worked with theory provers knows that this is really hard work, right? So also there are some certain features of the tool that you then have to take care of, and it's not, and you might have to make some compromises because the tool cannot really handle this or that well. This was the initial motivation to say first, well, let's ignore tools for now. I have also done a lot of work on like security analysis, protocol analysis with tools, and also developed like automated methods and so on. But I thought let's first concentrate on really the web features and the web model itself, just to write it down and see what we can do with it. But certainly it makes a lot of sense to mechanize it and well, when things get more and more complex, at some point it doesn't scale anymore. But the tool is not just a solution, and it goes just faster and without any effort.
I have a practical question which simply relates to that. So, to build the model, actually, you have to read the specification, for instance, the HTTP specification, and then find a formula where you grab basically the content of the specification, and then you can work with the formula and the proof.
Yeah, that exactly works again with a pizza tree.
Okay.
So you have your PhD students read all the specifications, and then...
How can you make sure that you do the right interpretation of the specification?
Yeah, that's always the problem, right?
Yeah,
So that's always the problem. Yeah, so I think the best proof is that when you use the model to analyze different standards, applications, and you find problems, then that's a good indication that, well, probably you, and the attacks actually work in practice, that's a good indication that, well, you did something right? Of course, there might be like mistakes that we made in translating. Well, it's hard to avoid this, right? Yeah. We tried our best, but it's best not.
Okay. Thank you.
Because so there is no, well, if there were some formal specification already, we could relate to that, but there isn't, right? So that was exactly the point, to do this finally.
So the community actually shares those models to improve the quality, to find quirks maybe?
Well, as I said, so that surprisingly there hasn't been much work so far. Probably now when we are doing the mechanization, that probably will open up so that other people can more easily use it and run models and extend it. So I guess once we have a model, a mechanized model, that this will then spread more widely. Anyone?
More questions? we need 307? Sounds absurd. So redirection with reposting of data somewhere else.
Well, sometimes you might say, well, I'm not the right origin, the right entity to talk to. Please talk to the other one. But I forward all this information that you provided. I also forward because the other guy will use it, needs it.
So yeah.
There can be applications where that actually makes sense.
And the other one, you were saying you were looking to theorem provers, and wondering what kind of theorem provers, so what would be the language that you need?
We want to, well, there are different ones we could use in principle. I also talk to different people, like one could use Isabel, Koch. What we are using, what we want to use is F-star, which is like a function language which has built-in verification mechanism. Essentially, it uses refinement types.
So you need a first order
And
language.
Z3.
You need a first order language to express all the problems.
Yeah, so another option would be to use things that have been used like in security protocol analysis, like specialized tools. For example, this Proverif tool that I mentioned, but there are also others. But they are not one can use it for more abstract. One could use these tools for more abstract models. But here, for example, we are modeling very precisely the window structure and navigations there and so on. And doing this with these essentially push-button tools, that doesn't work. So we need some kind of theorem prover, and we have to interact because, well, the tools are not smart enough to do this on their own.
Is there no more questions? Let's thank the speaker again. And I think we have a coffee break now.
Until 5. Until 5.
Until 5.